developing a culture for high-performing distributed teams. High-performing teams, whether distributed or physically co-located, have similar characteristics, but there are some elements and some behaviours that we need to substantially rethink. We'd expect to see cohesion, clarity of purpose, and of course alignment of people in an organisation behind that purpose. But things like authenticity and openness spring to mind as things that we need to emphasise. But also when we talk about a commitment culture is something where the team actually commits to a number of key pillars or key behaviours, and it's particularly suited to distributed teams. It comes out of a study that was done by two academics at Stanford some years ago. They spent 20 years looking at Silicon Valley firms and discovered that those with a commitment culture, out of 5 different cultures that they identified, were likely to be around 20% plus more effective, and particularly at IPO. So where's our imagination? The way we see things is framed by our experience. The education system that we have comes out of the 19th century and the Industrial Revolution. It's influenced the world of work. The world of work hasn't really changed when it comes to office culture over a century. Office layouts may have got more zingy and more smart, but actually in terms of the way that we work, they aren't massively different. So we have to question whether there is a lack of cognitive diversity in the way we think about work. We're going to take a look at a couple of examples from health and design. Reimagining cancer care. Here we're looking at a picture of a Maggie's Centre in Dundee in Scotland. Maggie's is a charity that was set up by a couple, Charles and Maggie Jenks, some years ago. Maggie was diagnosed with cancer in the late 80s. She was treated in remission, and then in the early 90s was re-diagnosed, and they were allowed to digest the news in a windowless corridor in a hospital in Edinburgh. And at that point they talked and discussed how they could make things better for cancer patients. And Maggie Centres are very unlike hospitals, even though most of them are in the grounds of hospitals. The staff don't wear uniforms, they're mostly centred around a kitchen table. Anybody can go to them, whether you're a patient, a friend, a relative. If you're impacted by cancer anyway, they provide numerous ways in supporting people. Because Charles was an architect and well known in architectural circles, he was able to persuade many famous architects to help in the design of Maggie Centres. This one in Dundee was designed by the architect Frank Gehry, who many of you will have heard of. He's famous for designing the Guggenheim in Bilbao. The building you now see in front of you is a bank building in Germany. Frank saw his role as taking people beyond the familiar. As I mentioned before, we are framed by our own experience, and there is a cautionary note in this. So Frank felt he needed to take people on a journey from what they knew to something that was unfamiliar and better than what they had before. However, when he was commissioned to design the Yale Psychiatric Hospital, like all good designers and architects, he did his research thoroughly by talking to people who would use the building, whether it's clinicians, patients, visitors, suppliers. And in one of these conversations, he was asking a particular lady what her perfect room was. And she gave him a very detailed description. And as she was going through this description, about halfway through, he realised that what she was doing was describing the room she was in. And he realised that, that he needed to take her and all the others beyond that to something that they were less familiar with. So how do we do that? Well, we need to reframe our perspective. We need to go beyond the familiar. We need to start to see things from other perspectives, go beyond our experience. To do this, we need to use certain techniques, and we have a number of techniques that we use. One of them is we describe as transposition. It's where we aim to get people to think about a particular issue or problem from another person's perspective or angle. And we create the question to do that. Indeed, it's been highly successful in getting people to a place where they can come up with innovative solutions to problems that they face, often in the most challenging circumstances. So if we want to maximise the benefits of distributed working and improve the productivity and well-being, the engagement levels of our teams, then we need to think about how we amend the way we work, how we persuade people who might be naysayers, and work together to look at all angles that might influence how we create high-performing distributed teams.